Welcome back to 101 East. Now, when issues like Tibet dominate international coverage, it's easy to forget that there is another side to China, a place with stories of great diversity and beauty. Lionel Deramay has been a freelance photographer for more than 2 decades, and he spent the past 2 years in Beijing. Here's his story in his own words.
My name is Lionel Deramay. I'm a French photographer. I've been a photographer for 28 years, and I've been living in China for 2.5 years now. I was looking for the little picture around, meaning before, after, mostly before and after. So after was the best time for me to get the picture. The story is mainly, I think, for me, before the Olympics. When you travel, you go to Europe or you go to the US, you see China is in every newspaper, every television program, and for sure it brought a lot of attention to China. I once got a call for a Hong Kong newspaper to photograph an activist who had a problem. He'd been beaten up and he was laying in a coma in a hospital. So I rushed down to the hospital and found the guy in question with his family around crying, and so there was a bit of a shuffle, you know, with the family was crying, and I couldn't stay very long because plainclothes policemen were around. What I really liked was the incredible visual life that's in the street, and I don't know if you find that anywhere else right now. China has this fantastic visual sites everywhere, every street corner, every little guy selling something in a hotong is a potential, you know, beautiful picture. I think my favorite images will be this changing China, this mixture of very modern things and very ancient traditions. I have a few pictures like that showing the changing of China.
And with me via satellite from Beijing is Professor An Bin-she from Tsinghua University School of Journalism and Communication. In the studio in KL, freelance journalist and former president of Hong Kong's Foreign Correspondents Club, Stephen Vines. Gentlemen, thanks for staying with us. Now, the film that we have just seen there tells the story of a photographer who asks a very interesting question. An Bin-she, let me put the essence of that question to you. And that is, what exactly is it that Beijing is frightened of from the Western media? Because there is so much in China that is positive and can be depicted positively. Should not Beijing be encouraging that kind of coverage rather than trying to stifle it?
There is a very strong nationalistic sentiment among Chinese people that Western media tend to demonize them.
Sorry to interrupt, but can you just expand a little bit on this idea of the Western media demonizing China? What exactly do you mean by that? Give us an example.
Yeah, like this Tibetan issue, I think you can see that most Western media will call those, we call them mob, but the Western media will say they are demonstrators, and also they will call Chinese government crackdown. So, but actually for many Chinese people, they will think this is just the same as they did in Paris, right, or in Los Angeles, right, or in London, right. But of course, in this sense, that Western media have a double standard when they deal with China and also deal with Tibet.
In Los Angeles and Paris, there was never any question of reporters going where they liked, fully reporting on those incidents. I mean, that's the big difference.
But again, I said this is a sort of standard, that whether there is a universal standard for journalism, because I still think that China is a country practicing partisan journalism, while in Western country you practice the market-oriented journalism, or libertarian journalism. So there must need some time for Chinese government to conform to this Western-centered ethics and also norms of journalism. So that's why you would have a different,
Steve, you've been living outside of the West for long enough to know that it's not just China. It's a fairly common complaint amongst many countries outside of the Western sphere of things that they get judged by different standards and they get judged in fairly negative ways. There is some truth to that, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, this is the absolutely universal problem. Everywhere you go, people say they don't understand us, we are different. Chinese people say this, actually American people say this, the rest of the world doesn't understand us. We're here to bring peace to Iraq, etc., etc. You know, China's not special in this sense. The simple fact of the matter is that all media come with their own agenda. I really do believe that you have to make allowances for that. But the question is, do you allow every agenda to have a place at the table, or you know, on the screen, or wherever it is, or don't you? And unfortunately, in authoritarian regimes, that is not the case.
Well, Anbin, is China's relationship with the media a function of its authoritarian government, or is it a function of culturally maybe the way Western media portrays its role in society? Maybe in China that value is different. They don't hold that same idea.
You cannot expect that China overnight will follow the Western libertarian media system, and we're still controlled by the party, and the internet is still censored. But of course, this actually has some consensus from both the officials and also from the intellectuals and also from the common people. So they agree that the media must be controlled, and you know, in terms of social stability.
There are many, as I'm sure Professor Sher knows, there are many protests in China all the time, and some of these are in fact covered in the local media in China. But what happens is they very often turn violent simply because people think they have no other outlet. So villagers riot against party officials, this sort of thing happens.
It's a fair point, and the pent-up aggression seems to be a function of the inability to express themselves, don't you think, Anbin?
Yeah, I think the internet already play a role actually in these years, that especially in recent years, that to serve as a sort of outlet of the people's sort of sentiment or antipathy toward the party officials or government. So again, my view is that this media reform is a sort of a gradual process. You know that in China is also a sort of different cultural context, because many Chinese people believe that silence is gold, obedience will you know sort of like get reward.
One final question very quickly to you, Anbin. You say that social stability is the issue, but one thing that makes me question whether that's the case is the fact that the one thing China's government does not do, even with its professed desire for more openness, is it does not speak directly to the media. When will we see Chinese government officials expressing direct opinions to the people?
Actually, myself was involved with the training programs issued by the State Council, that we have already trained nearly 4,000 government spokespersons at the ministries and also in local government. And if you notice that last year, we have already held over 14,000 press conferences at different government levels. I think the Chinese government already changed their image, that of course under the pressure of Olympics and also World Expo. Right, so that the publicity is sort of underway.
And one final word to you, Stephen. I mean, in Hong Kong is an interesting test case here. Have you seen the kind of evidence of the stuff that Anbin is talking about?
To a limited extent, yes. But what is so remarkable, and after all, Hong Kong is also a Chinese society, so you can't argue there's cultural differences. What is so remarkable is the enormous disparity between the two medias, although they are part of the same country. And
that's an interesting thought that we'll have to take up on a different day. Gentlemen, thank you both indeed for talking to us today. That's all we have time for. My thanks to our guests, Professor Anbin She and Stephen Vines, but from all of us here at 101 East, it's goodbye.